Good morning. So today I'm going to be talking about a film based on a toy line and a cartoon series about an interstellar journey to Earth which puts science fiction characters in the life of an unhappy teenage girl. No, I'm not talking about Bumblebee, which was an awesome film by the way. I'm talking about a film produced by an 80s B-movie production company which took a toy line and tried to shoot for the stars and completely missed.
Delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes, everybody, welcome back to Delightfully Devilish, the show where we discuss films that all at once meet the criteria of being the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm your host, Jukebox Harry, and today we are looking at a crossover of multiple 1980s cultural phenomenons. Masters of the Universe is based on the toy line from Mattel and was previously adapted into a cartoon series, which was pretty popular in the 1980s. It was produced by Cannon Films, arguably the most 1980s production company out there, and it starred Dolph Lundgren in his first post-Rocky IV role. The film combined a lot of different elements with a sword and sandal fantasy quest, a science fiction aesthetic, and a fish-out-of-water comedy premise. But it didn't get any of those things right. Now, I've watched Masters of the Universe 3 times, and I've never actually seen the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon itself, unless you count this meme. So as someone who's not a diehard fan of the cartoon series, you think I wouldn't be way too disappointed by this film, right? Masters of the Universe kicks off with intro credits, where the visual style looks like it's been shamelessly plagiarized by the Superman film series. This doesn't come as a surprise. Cannon Films actually own the rights to the Superman film series. In the same year as this movie, they released Superman 4, The Quest for Peace, which is now cited as one of the worst movies of all time. To its credit, Masters of the Universe actually opens with some pretty spectacular theme music. It echoes elements of Superman, but it's definitely its own original theme, and it's done by Bill Conti, who I think is one of the greatest composers in Hollywood history. Yes, I do say that as a diehard fan of the Rocky series, although I will say at the same time, the musical theme to this film isn't anything like the theme song from the cartoon, so it immediately suggests a very different tone of storytelling.
And the Masters of the Universe!
Then we cut to an oil painting, an actual oil painting which is meant to be the set of the planet of Eternia. We see the universe of the film inside Castle Grayskull, where everything is literally designed to look as Star Wars as possible. Skeletor's costume is designed to resemble Emperor Palpatine, the henchman is designed to look like a cross between Stormtroopers and Darth Vader, and the music begins to sound achingly similar to the theme that played when Princess Leia's ship was intercepted by a Star Destroyer at the beginning of Star Wars A New Hope. Cannon Films made no effort to disguise the fact that they were trying to plagiarize Star Wars in this film. The tagline for the movie was, "A battle fought in the stars, now it comes to Earth." The company even touted that this was going to be the Star Wars of the 1980s in an effort to get people pumped up for the movie. If it actually achieved that status, it wouldn't be appearing on this show today. And here comes Skeletor's big reveal.
What the hell is that?
The ugliest motherfucker I ever seen.
You're one ugly motherfucker.
That rubber Skeletor mask is one of the most phenomenally awful looking prosthetic masks I have ever seen in a movie. As in, it's up there with the masks from Troll 2. Its issues become most relevant when the actor playing Skeletor, Frank Langella, an accomplished stage actor and Academy Award nominee, is forced to act underneath a mask which hides all his facial expressions. His performance is often cited as the highlight of the film, and I'll give him credit for that, but it's very strange to have such a devoted and intense performance buried underneath some pretty awful prosthetics.
You look like Freddy Krueger face fuck a topographical map of Utah.
Skeletor has taken the sorceress hostage so that he can drain her power for use in conquering Eternia.
He-Man is still alive. I can feel it.
Really?
Did the film forget to shoot a scene where He-Man was supposed to have died? I don't think his survival was up for debate by anyone. Skeletor appears to everyone as an Aurora Borealis.
Aurora Borealis. At this time of year, at this time of day, in this part of the country.
Yes.
One of the people to see him is He-Man, played by Dolph Lundgren, who honestly kinda looks pretty cool. When He-Man spots the villains carrying a mystical dwarf, this turns into a fight scene which is shot by someone who has no business coordinating action scenes. The best frames of this shot are average, the worst are consistently too close to show us anything that's going on, and there's even an inexplicable close-up of Dolph Lundgren's nipples. You'd think that Joel Schumacher was an intern on the camera crew for this movie. The dwarf is a toyetic character named Gwildor, who never existed in the Masters of the Universe franchise before this film. And he's another one with a very unconvincing mask. It's always the lips in this film, we just never get convincing lip movements with the prosthetics. Gwildor carries a precious invention with him.
I call it the Cosmic Key. It is the most unique key in the universe.
Yes, I believe that, because most keys are designed to open small doors, not to rip off Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
The tones it generates can open a doorway to anywhere.
This is the device that allowed Skeletor's forces to arrive on Eternia, because it was stolen by a certain female.
How could I know she was from Snake Mountain? She was beautiful.
That would be Evelyn.
Oh, it must have been her. She's the only beautiful woman in the galaxy. The villains find our heroes. Uh-oh, the tanks from Inchon are attacking again.
Secure the room. Find the key.
Oh, Jesus, another one. Do convincing prosthetics just not exist in the universe of this film? The heroes sneak off and somehow manage to sneak right into the core of Skeletor's chamber, so naturally they come under attack pretty soon.
Everything comes to he who waits.
Unless of course you're waiting for a good He-Man film, then you get this.
Let her go.
I don't think so.
Dolph Lundgren's line delivery isn't good, but he does look the part, whereas Frank Langella has amazing line delivery and doesn't look the part at all. The difficulties each actor faces in this film are polar opposites.
I am Skeletor.
I don't believe that.
We get a sci-fi shootout where the camera is slightly better, but again, most of the shots aren't wide enough for us to get the spectacle.
It's working! It's working! It's working!
Why are you surprised at that? Do you not have faith in yourself as an inventor? Because if that's the case, then I don't know that the hero should trust you. Also, that line...
It's working!
I think George Lucas ended up taking some inspiration from that line because he put it in The Phantom Menace.
It's working! It's working!
Maybe he stole an idea from this film because they stole so many ideas from his movies.
Perfectly balanced, as all things should be.
And then there's this really awkward shot. The director of photography on this film, Hanani Aber, he is an idiot. Whoever filmed this was like, oh shit, I gotta move to the next person, oh shit, there's one more! And the film gives us some of these shots where there is an inexplicable amount of space above the heads of the actors. I like to call this the Samurai Cop camera technique because it was featured so prominently in that movie. But that's one of many reasons Samurai Cop has earned the legacy of being one of the worst films of all time. Fun fact, Bayer was a Palestinian man working with an Israeli production company. I'm sure they had a whole lot to talk about. Once Gwildor has opened the portal, our heroes escape through it with no way of knowing where they would have ended up.
You got us here, you Thanurian Wurabat. Now you get us home.
Calm down.
Oh, stand back. We got a real menace of a character here. Turns out our heroes have lost the key, so they decide to split up and search for it.
Good journey.
Good journey.
Good journey.
That line was not used in the television series. It was a new one introduced for this film, and it's not even a good one. But this film doesn't even use the line by the power of Grayskull, so there you go. Now, if you know canon films, you know there's only one affordable location where these characters would have been transported. Contemporary Earth, even though this is in fact the most expensive film that Canon Films ever produced. A pre-Friends Courtney Cox plays Julie Winston, a girl finishing her final shift at a fast food restaurant.
Oh boy, Robbie's ribs.
Masters of the Universe would have you think that Robbie's Ribs are a real organization, but no, they're completely fictitious. But the way they get featured so prominently in this film, you'd think they were doing some product placement, but they're not. The producers could have put some actual product placement in these scenes to make more money, but they didn't.
You mean this used to be an animal? Mm-hmm. What a barbaric world.
As a vegan, I approve this message. Fun fact, the location where they're filming just outside Robbie's Ribs, that's where the Rodney King beating happened several years later.
I never told anyone this before.
Oh, Julie, how convenient that you would only speak about it now that the cameras are rolling. A while ago, Julie's parents died in a plane crash, a flight which they wouldn't have been on if Julie hadn't told a certain lie to them to spend time with their boyfriend. This, of course, has nothing to do with the Master of the Universe itself, but it ends up being about half the drama in the movie. They find the key, supposedly in the middle of a cemetery, not in an obviously different location. When her rockstar boyfriend Kevin starts playing with it, it emits a signal which allows Skeletor to track its location.
I have selected your finest warriors. Blade.
Laser. Blazer. I believe you've met my fitness consigliere, Michelle.
And now we're ripping off The Empire Strikes Back. This shot right here in particular. This film has plagiarized the entire original Star Wars trilogy before it's even half an hour in. One of them even looks like Bosk trying to dress like Liberace. And this guy looks like Forrest Whitaker in Battlefield Earth. So this film is left to remind you of much better films and much worse ones. While in a school later, Julie takes some more time to remind us that her parents are dead. Well, if she really misses her mom, she can go rescue the sorceress, because the actress in that role was the actress that would play her character's mother on Friends later.
True story.
Skeletor's henchmen arrive at the school, but Julie doesn't know what's happening at first.
Kevin, if this is some kind of joke, it's really not funny.
Jeez, you have really high expectations for how far your boyfriend's going to prank you. It doesn't sound like a very wholesome relationship. Once they find Julie, a school shooting breaks out. Although it's not the white male character executing it this time. A chase ensues. That must have been so satisfying to film. She runs straight into the arms of a half-naked blonde stranger.
Now what are you running from?
The past. He-Man fights everyone off in a junkyard, because that's a far more ideal battle setting than Eternia. After the mundane shootout portion of the fight ensues, we move on to a sword fight. It's not too bad, but I kind of feel like I've been watching Dolph Lundgren have a lot of sword fights lately. I just did an episode on Showdown in Little Tokyo. The rest of the heroes rock up and scare them off.
My boyfriend and I found this thing that had all these patterns of light.
He's in terrible danger. Let's go.
With the way you said that, I could not be less convinced that he is in danger. Kevin, the boyfriend, goes to the school in search of Julie, but the police won't let him in. Stopping a white teenage boy from entering the school is typically what you should do before the school shooting happens, not after. But whatever, they arrest him. The plot is pretty much stalled at this point in time, so in comes Gwildor with a pink Cadillac to distract everyone.
We fought with the Eternians, but we're outnumbered.
You were fighting 3 Eternians. There was 4 of you, plus all of Skeletor's army that you brought with you.
Fucking liar!
Skeletor executes one of them and sends Evil Lyn to lead another assault. There's a whole bunch of talking between the last action scene and the next, and little of it is relevant besides Officer Michael Chiklis running off with a key. The rest is just there for filler and doesn't even advance the story. Things don't start moving again until we get this inexplicable product placement shot for Burger King before we see Skeletor's goons come into Kevin's house and attack him. They throw him at a table and force him to reveal the location of the key.
It
was taken from me. A policeman.
And in between it all, we get yet another reminder that Julie's parents are dead. Masters of the Universe is so loud about Julie's parents being dead that you think they brought Danny DeVito onto the set.
Your mother is dead!
They leave him in the house and forget to take the neck chain of truth? I don't know, that seems like a waste of some pretty fancy technology.
What's the matter with him?
Probably the alien lock around his neck, Monica.
Julie, get out of here! Now!
Oh, damn!
I was watching this clip so ready to turn it into a Simpsons meme, but then she blew the chair up and now I'm sad.
Will somebody tell me what the hell is going on here?
What's going on? If we dress like this, no one will recognize us.
This is bad comedy.
Things move to the music store where our heroes get the key back from the cop.
Reminds me of the invasion of the body snatchers. You know, part of the pods start taking over the people's bodies and they don't know who are the pods and who are the bodies.
Shut up.
There's almost nothing in this film that resembles Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That's the one movie they didn't try to rip off. The villains attack again, leading to a fairly dull shootout in a music store. Why does this have to keep happening on Earth? Why couldn't we have had more battles on Eternia? An explosion goes off, which sends a bunch of stormtroopers flying into different walls.
They're killing each other out there!
Yeah, no, they're not. Mattel put a clause in the contract that says He-Man isn't allowed to kill anyone in this film because he doesn't do it in the cartoon, so the death count is going to be minimal. As for all the stormtroopers, turns out they're robots.
Kevin, you know how to use one of these?
Only in Columbine. Julie's deceased parents finally become a somewhat relevant plot point when she sees her mother out in the street. Obviously we know this is Evil Lynn in disguise, and she clearly took her appearance from the photos she saw earlier, but there's no explanation as to how she replicates the voice of Julie's mother.
Oh, I'm so sorry I had to go through all of that, Julie, but we had to disappear.
Still, Julie just naturally gives the key to her without ever second guessing it. Michael Chiklis tries to be a hero, but it doesn't work, and somehow he's completely unscathed after a car explosion goes off literally right next to him. Evil Lynn takes the key and summons another portal which carries stormtroopers, Skeletor's Return of the Jedi influenced sail barge, and his hoverboard goons. And the moment I saw these guys, I was immediately struck by Vietnam flashbacks to the time my childhood was shattered when I first saw the single worst movie of all time, Highlander 2, The Quickening. I really want to forget that that movie ever existed, but Masters of the Universe insisted on taking me back there. I bet the filmmakers thought this was going to be the most exciting scene in the film, but the entire sequence is really awkward. The obviously green screen flight scenes lack any believability and their animation is very stiff. It might be slightly entertaining on some level to see Dolph Lundgren riding around with his blonde hair in the wind while he chases and battles alien forces, but there's nothing to unironically enjoy about this scene. Some of the takes even make He-Man look incredibly small. Eventually he crashes onto a roof where everyone has been captured and both him and Julie get shocked. And there's a moment of hope where He-Man continues to beat up Skeletor's troopers while everyone just stands there watching, not even bothering to intervene. Things only stop when Skeletor tells them to stop, offering everyone else freedom if He-Man returns to Eternia to be his slave.
I don't want innocent people to die.
Well said, He-Man.
It really wasn't. He barely got those words out without tripping over them. Julie apparently got poisoned by Skeletor's electroshock.
Poison's already in her blood, Kevin. The wound will just keep growing.
Only our sorcerers can heal her now.
Wow, that dickhead just cut his daughter off mid-sentence. I believe that's what they call manterrupting.
The tones that were stored in this cosmic key were completely erased.
As a musician, Kevin just so happens to be skilled enough with music that he can remember the tones. But after inspiring everyone with hope, he instantly gives up.
Listen to me, boy. In half a chromon, we're not going to have a sorceress to go home to. So if you know how to do something with that thing, then you do.
That guy shakes his head so much in this scene, you'd think he instantly developed Parkinson's disease. We cut back to Eternia where the sorceress is now wearing a prosthetic mask as well. Every time I looked at the sorceress in this scene, I just kept on waiting for her to turn into Zordon from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
It is not too late to undo this madness.
Madness. This is my destiny.
Blade starts whipping He-Man with the CGI whip, and you can see that the filmmakers have failed to sync up Dolph Lundgren's movements with the guy holding the whip, as well as the CGI. Skeletor then opens up the anus of the throne room and absorbs the powers of the universe or something. I don't know, I don't really care enough to find out. But the powers grant him a new elaborate costume.
You will never.
Jeez, all those powers turn Skeletor into R. Kelly. On that topic, the director of this film, Gary Goddard, he's been accused of sexual assault by numerous people, and he's a frequent collaborator of Bryan Singer, another person who's been accused. Really makes you wonder what was going on behind closed doors of this troubled production. The rest of the gang are able to teleport to Eternia, but Skeletor's troopers all open fire.
You promised not to hurt them!
Hitler promised not to invade Czechoslovakia. Welcome to the real world.
He-Man breaks free.
Somebody tell me what the hell's going on around here! What's going on?
Michael Michael Chiklis steps up and starts shooting every black person in sight, thus doing his job as a police officer. Despite the amateur cinematography, the action in this scene is slightly more amusing. It's probably because the set of Eternia is one of the few things that the people actually spent money on in this film. We get physical combat, sword fighting, and a shootout all going on at the same time. It's not exactly spectacular, but it's far more amusing than any of the other so-called action scenes so far. Skeletor's pretty fucking useless for the entire scene until He-Man makes his way up to Skeletor's throne, where he draws his sword and finally speaks the famous words. Despite everything that I've trashed in this film, that one moment always gets me. The music, the flashing lights, the deep voice of Dolph Lundgren. It may not be on par with the voice from the animated series, but it has its charm.
You will no longer stand between me and my destiny. But I will.
Oh, come on, He-Man. You've got to be able to come up with a better comeback than "but I will."
Let this be our final battle.
Let this be our final battle.
Suddenly, the lighting and cinematography in the film all changes because Canon Films made the decision to halt filming 3 days before filming was due to finish because of financial issues with the studio. After the director lobbied to have them scrape together some funds, a few people barged back onto the set without a proper camera or lighting crew and filmed a final renegade battle. The fight concludes with He-Man knocking Skeletor down the shaft, so even in death he resembles Emperor Palpatine. Everyone says goodbye, or good journey. Julie and Kevin travel back to Earth only to find out that they've somehow traveled back in time to the day of Julie's parents' death. She steals their keys to prevent them from ever getting on the plane that kills them. Yeah, if time travel was an option, why didn't we just travel back in time to before Skeletor took over? Why not travel back in time to countless other periods when you could have changed things? Why does time travel only become a relevant plot point when it's trying to save this girl's dead parents and not everyone that died on Eternia? Also, the writers really couldn't have thought this through because this means that in another timeline, Julie's parents have died and then her and Kevin have disappeared to move into another timeline. This would have left a lot of people distraught, so even with the best intentions, the Masters of the Universe have ruined the lives of several people in an alternative timeline. Whatever, once the credits are done rolling, we have Skeletor come back as a Terminator.
I'll be back.
Somehow
Skeletor
returned.
This was for a sequel that never happened.
So that was a fucking lie.
Also, what happened to Evil Lynn and the rest of her henchmen? We forgot to shoot any ending for them. Whatever, is Masters of the Universe a good film?
No! No!
Masters of the Universe is the exact kind of film you should expect from Canon Films, but not the exact film you would expect from a Masters of the Universe movie. First of all, let's break down just how much plagiarism went on to make this film happen. Following its Superman intro, we witness the Star Wars aesthetic and Return of the Jedi villain. We go to a Conan the Barbarian-esque setting, and the protagonist meets a dwarf who has just invented a Close Encounters influenced instrument. The characters get transported to 1980s Earth to avoid being attacked, just like in Back to the Future. Not to mention they changed the course of time to make this girl's life better. Julie is a lonely young character who makes friends with these aliens and becomes determined to help them get home, just like in E.T. After sending the Empire Strikes Back group of mercenaries, the villains come and invade Earth, proceeding to destroy a whole lot of suburban locations like in Invasion USA.
This is an invasion.
And following the action climax, Skeletor literally quotes Terminator. I may have missed a couple things, but that's 10 examples of plagiarism that I just listed. The acting in Masters of the Universe is very subpar, save from Frank Langella, who manages to give a very cartoony and very energetic performance as the film's central villain underneath all those terrible prosthetics. The action in the film is also uninspiring, but the main problem with the movie really is the story. Nobody became attached to the Masters of the Universe because we wanted to see them in an Earth setting. They are fantasy characters from a fantasy world where anything is possible. Forcing them onto planet Earth is lazy and cheap, but it's also incredibly boring. Nobody cares about the characters Julie or Kevin, no matter how much we're reminded of her dead parents.
She's as dead as disco.
The filmmakers try to fill so much dead air with pathetic sentimentality about characters unrelated to the Masters of the Universe. If you are going to make the setting Earth, then you should put a lot more emphasis on the fish out of water aspect of the story. Make it campy, make it funny. This film doesn't do any of that. It just plays it completely serious. The Star Trek series told this story by the time they'd gotten to their 4th film. But for one thing, they emphasized the comedy of the story a lot more. And for another thing, they had already told a lot of stories set in their universe and decided to put it on Earth as a change of pace. Masters of the Universe went straight to planet Earth because it was the lazy way to do so, and then didn't even write a decent script to go with it. Another big problem with Masters of the Universe is that the hero of the film should be He-Man, but he could not have less to do with the film. He plays second fiddle to every other character in the story, with the majority of the screen time going to an irrelevant human character and an annoying toyetic. He-Man has so little to do in the film and is given so few lines of dialogue. I don't know if this decision was made because Dolph Lundgren was cast in the role and his lack of fluency in English resulted in a lot of stilted line delivery, but if that's the case, then just change the casting. Apparently they were meant to dub Dolph Lundgren's voice with someone else, but they got too far behind schedule and didn't have the time to do that. After watching this film 3 times, I finally decided to sit down and actually watch the He-Man and the Masters of the Universe cartoon. And honestly, it was much closer to the G.I. Joe cartoon than anything that this film put out. It was a pretty stock standard, family-friendly cartoon where the characters went on zany adventures to learn life lessons, and each episode concluded with a character explaining the moral of the story to the viewer.
In today's story, Zagraz had a problem.
I loved it. It was good, unserious fun. But it wasn't in the slightest what Canon Films tried to do. Canon Films approached Masters of the Universe in the same way that Michael Bay approached the Transformers film series. Rather than focusing on what made these series so popular in the first place, they both decided to go ahead and just try to mimic the styles of contemporary blockbusters. Michael Bay went in the direction of contemporary action disaster films, whereas Canon Films went in the direction of trying to copy Star Wars as much as possible. One big difference though is that the Transformers films can at least boast being groundbreaking technical achievements in the area of visual effects. Masters of the Universe can't tote that at all. In reality, Masters of the Universe chose to adapt this film from the Masters of the Universe toy line rather than from the cartoon. They gave it an original story and some original characters, and none of it was good at all. From the cartoon, we can gather that He-Man is an all-American style fantasy hero, a G.I. Joe dressed as a sci-fi Conan the Barbarian.
He-Man, the most powerful man in the universe.
So when you cast an inexperienced Swedish actor in the role, you're missing the entire point. When studios cast Jean-Claude Van Damme as the all-American Guile in Street Fighter 7 years after Masters of the Universe, they made the exact same mistake. The best actor I can think of to play He-Man in this film would have been Sam J. Jones, the star of Flash Gordon. He's not the greatest actor, but that could work in the film's favor. He could put in a very campy vibe, which would give the film a nice cartoonish feel, and he would look the part pretty well. But unfortunately, that's not the case. Amongst the few positive things I would have to say about Masters of the Universe would be that if you ignore the source material and the fact that this is a He-Man film, the movie does have kind of a nostalgic 80s vibe to it. Some of the flashy special effects are colourful, so there is also an occasional sense of flair. Bill Conti's musical score is spectacular, and Frank Langella fully embraces his role as Skeletor. He actually cites this as one of his favourite roles. He took on the role just because his son loved He-Man so much, so him being able to say he played Skeletor was pretty much all for his kid. And that's really wholesome. But when it comes down to reviewing it, Master of the Universe gets 3 fake rubber masks out of 10. It has a few moments of technical flair, but it's mostly a tediously sentimental and very unfunny journey which betrays its cartoon roots in favour of an adaptation of He-Man which could not have less to do with the character. And that does it for today's episode of Delightfully Devilish, you guys. If there's any ideas for movies you would like me to discuss on this show, please leave them in the comment section below. If you would like to see more episodes, please hit that subscribe button. Otherwise, until next time, I've been your host, Jukebox Harry. Good journey.